Welcome to the Tesla Economist. Please hit the thumbs up and remember to subscribe. You can also follow me on Twitter and talk to me on Patreon. Many of you have been following Tesla long enough to recall production hell. This is when Tesla were ramping up the Model 3 to mass production. Elon admits it was the most difficult time in his career, maybe even his life. You may even remember the huge tent that was constructed to help ramp up the level of production. In fact, it's only until now Tesla are finally making the tent a permanent structure. Tesla and Elon managed to break through production hell and ended up delivering over 50,000 Model 3s in Q3 2018, well over an average of 15,000 units a month of one model. As far as I can tell, there are no other electric vehicle models that produce more than 10,000 units a month. It seems that this number tends to be somewhat of a ceiling, which leads me to believe that this is about the limit EV manufacturers are capable of for EVs, until they also need to go through their own production hell. It is clearly evident now that ICE manufacturing doesn't hold the intellectual property that many used to believe when transitioning over to EV manufacturing. It sounds absurd, I know, as the two products look so similar. But how else can you explain the Chinese new EV startups beating all the ICE legacy companies? So it's around this 10,000 units a month that all the other manufacturers seem to have difficulty breaking out from. Something Tesla achieved 3 years ago with no prior experience. Yes, Tesla has experience with S and X, but they were each only around 5,000 a month at their peaks. What if none of the other car manufacturers can break past that level or make fatal mistakes trying? Are they going to go to the effort Tesla did? Elon was sleeping on a couch in an office on the production floor. Tesla even had to fly more robots from Europe as they were required so urgently. Tesla extended the Fremont factory in a tent because they were so desperate. This was the hardest thing one of the most intelligent people had to go through. It was Elon's baby, Elon's net worth, Elon's dream and mission of saving the world, Elon's chance of being the richest man in the world, and Tesla becoming the largest company in history. I can't think of any other CEO who would have that much motivation in breaking past production hell. Perhaps you might think William Li, the CEO of NIO Autos, would also equally do whatever it takes to sort out his production line for mass scale. Except it's not really his production line, is it? I mean, it's not even NIO's production line. NIO is the antithesis of Tesla in that they're doing the absolute opposite of vertical integration. JAC Motors is the company that assembles NIO's vehicles. JAC is actually a joint venture with Volkswagen to produce electric cars for the Chinese market with the Seat brand. In other words, if they run into production hell, then how can William Li motivate JAC to do everything they can to break through? It's simply not as critical to their business as it is NIO's. As for the legacy autos, they do have their ICE businesses to fund them through their production hell, unlike Tesla, who, as we later found out, were weeks from running out of money and making desperate attempts to sell to the obtuse Tim Cook. I bet he's kicking himself now. But just because Tesla did it on a shoestring budget with limited time, does that mean that these legacy autos can do it with billions of dollars and enough time to give it a few shots? Or is it one of those things where some real magic was created and is simply too big a hurdle for anyone else to come close to replicating? Either way, it does appear that this level of production is somewhat of a limiting factor so far, and partly why I say this is that Elon often reminds us just how hard scaling up really is. And presumably he is referring to EVs, not autos in general, and it would seem that perhaps the others are also finding out too. So rather than scale up production on their models, instead they simply release more models. And 30 different models on different production lines, each perhaps doing 10,000 units a month capacity, which would result in dramatic losses in economies of scale, spreading everything out so thin. But it's a way that the legacy autos might actually be able to deliver their EVs, assuming they have their battery factories up and running by this stage. They struggle to ramp up any more than 10,000 units a month, which, let's face it, is probably overly ambitious anyway, as it's probably hard for them to find more than 10,000 customers a month for one of their models. So once they hit this limiting level of production, they simply start again with a different model. The incumbents have it in their plan that more is better. More models equals more sales and more success. More variety to the consumer to choose something that more exactly meets their lifestyle and tastes. Whereas Tesla would rather just make every model they do that much better due to concentrating on fewer models. So consumers end up not caring too much. If their car is slightly smaller than they'd like, they're too busy watching Netflix wherever they go instead, and care less as to the actual car design. Functionalities of Teslas simply outweigh everything else an incumbent auto player can offer. But the loss of economy to scale of having to make so many different models will simply eat further into any profits the legacy autos can accrue from EVs by this stage, which by the sound of it will be minimal. It will be one thing for them to secure their own battery supply in their own factories. It'll be another thing to actually get the costs of the batteries down to a competitive level. But in reality, they don't have to compete with Tesla. Besides, Tesla continually moves the goalposts, making it virtually impossible anyway. What the legacy autos have to concentrate on is competing with ICE vehicles and cannibalize their own businesses, whilst using said business to fund their EV growth. That might be tough. What is actually happening here? Well, legacy autos' ICE sales will dwindle, meaning any profits they were making previously with ICE vehicles would now possibly become losses. In other words, their ICE cars are now not able to sell sufficient quantities to reach the economies of scale required to make a profit. They'll also be investing less in any new ICE models and R&D into their engines. So the progression of ICE cars will have less funding, meaning their latest ICE cars will offer less, and sales will fall again. In the meantime, these companies will be trying to sell their EV models that also likely make a loss on every sale. Outcome being that they lose money on every ICE car they sell and every EV they sell. They still have their parts and financing side of the business to help them with some cash flow, but it's tough to get your head around how they can transition. Even if they can build an EV at a lower cost than they sell, there still needs to be enough margin remaining to cover advertising and car dealers. This really is a tough one, not to mention the tens of billions of dollars they're claiming on investing in order to achieve this. Literally, this is what they're saying. We are going to invest as much money as around literally half the market capitalization of our entire company into EVs and batteries in order to compete with our ICE business that generates all our profits into EVs that we can't make any profits from. That's their business plan. It seems somewhat flawed. Volvo's strategy might be a bit better, setting up a subsidiary of an electric company, the Polestar, so its EV business doesn't necessarily need to go down with the rest of the ship. Of course, Polestar is no threat to Tesla or ICE cars at this stage. To be honest, I think Hyundai's strategy is probably the best, by going with LFP batteries and keeping the cars basic and cheap, resulting in a low-cost EV at a competitive price point to ICE cars, and even undercutting Tesla. Anyway, we haven't seen Hyundai scale up yet either, and go through any potential production hell. Okay, the tiny basic Wulang death trap in China that cost around $4,000 actually did sell 30,000 units in May. But I think we can agree that mass scaling something as basic as that is obviously a lot easier, particularly as how it doesn't have to comply with international safety standards. I may be wrong, and perhaps it's just that there simply aren't more than 10,000 consumers each month that actually want to buy the legacy autos EVs. Well, if that's the case, then as a Tesla shareholder, I can live with that too. Or maybe that is the dilemma all these other manufacturers face. There is a stage where ramping up to the next level is difficult, and if they don't have the demand to support it, then why bother going to that much effort and expense? Making more EVs for them might not mean more sales, and if they're making a loss with each car, then why would they want to make a further loss? Or maybe it's still just that hard to get batteries for them, that even if they could produce that many vehicles, then they wouldn't have the batteries to supply them anyway. On the other hand, Tesla did initially over-automate the production process, when humans were actually better than robots in a lot of the scenarios. If I recall, one of the examples Elon gave was that robots aren't able to pick up fluff. So some of these production hell issues were actually down to Tesla's lack of manufacturing experience too. So it will be interesting to see what kind of issues the other manufacturers run into when trying to scale past this level. Thanks for listening. Please hit the thumbs up and subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter and talk to me on Patreon.